So today I'm going to be talking about some of the problems, the challenges, and the mistakes I made when I started out my journey into the world of creating systems and outsourcing my work, and what you can learn from this so you can avoid making all those mistakes yourself.
So the question is this: how do entrepreneurs like us, who don't have an endless supply of cash, how do we leverage the best apps, virtual assistants, automation tools, and systems to scale our businesses, increase our profits, and have more time to do what we love to do each day? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name's Dr. Steve Day, and this is Systemize Your Success.
Okay, so yesterday I shared the lead up to me hiring my first virtual assistant, Joanna. Joanna was from Northern Ireland and she was costing me about £15 an hour, $20 I think I was paying her through a site called Upwork. And she was a massive help. I mean, she took away probably about an hour's worth of admin and just this mundane sort of tasks that I was doing. And that 1 hour a day, that equates to about 6 hours a year, 6 weeks a year over a typical working year. And that's 6 weeks that I was able to then focus on growing my business, on doing stuff that I love to do each day, or just actually having a bit more free time to spend with friends and family. So it was a massive help. But it didn't all exactly go to plan. It wasn't like she came in and suddenly my business took off. And there's a few major problems. I want to go through each of those because I know that from speaking to hundreds of small business owners about this process of outsourcing work, these are the same common problems that come up time and time again. So first of all was cost. Joanna was costing me around £15, as I said, but my business really wasn't making enough money to cover that. So I was having to dip into my savings, and I had some other income from another business, and I was sort of like subsidizing this new business with that because I really didn't have that much money to pay her. And so this meant that I had this in the back of my mind, this niggle thinking it'd just be cheaper to do it myself. And that is a real problem because if you start getting into that mindset, it'll prevent you from actually giving work to somebody, and therefore you end up doing it yourself, and you don't have the time as the business owner to actually focus on the highest income generating tasks that are actually going to let your business grow and scale and make your business a huge success in the future. So that was a real big problem for me. And I didn't understand it to the detail and the level I understand it now. At the time, I just felt, this was just costing too much. And so the second problem was that it was just taking too long for me to really get stuff done. So first of all, I would be like writing long instructions and like thinking they were really detailed. I'd do checklists. I'd be like creating like maybe some screenshots and sort of explaining things and thinking there's no way this could go wrong. I'd send it over to her via email at the time. And she would then sort of come back to me with a bunch of questions or do the work and it'd be wrong. Or we'd end up with these toing and froing of communication going back and forth, just trying to understand exactly what it is that I wanted doing or correcting the work because it wasn't done exactly how I intended it to be done. And all this was just making it feel like it would have been easier just to do it myself. So cheaper to do it myself and easier to do it myself. Now, the last problem that I faced, and again, I know that many, many people face the same problem, is that I felt out of control. I felt like I didn't really know what she was working on. I didn't know what her priority tasks were, even though I'd sort of say, hey, can you work on this next? Or, then I'd give her 3 or 4 more tasks and say, oh, task 4 was more important than task 2, or, and it all became a bit of a mess and really hard to maintain and actually keep control over exactly what was going on. So I felt out of control. I felt it was costing too much and taking too much time. It wasn't really the way it was intended or the way I imagined it would be when I started out. And the result of all this was that the relationship started breaking down. I started just feeling resentful to paying her for this stuff that she was doing and taking too long. It wasn't being done right. And eventually we ended up parting company. In hindsight, I know it wasn't her fault. I know that it was the fact that I had no frameworks in place for how to manage her remotely or how to delegate my work out. And I was also paying her more than I could actually afford at that moment in time. She probably would have been the right person for me and my business a little bit further along. And I actually now have a PA who's based in the UK who I pay a similar amount for. I'm very happy with that. But my business is making a bit more money now. Back then, I couldn't afford it. So despite all these setbacks, I really needed to make this work. I had to figure out how to get someone to do my work right the first time they did it. So I wasn't with this wasting time with coming back and forth all the time, and how to find someone who I could afford to actually pay. And I'd heard about, outsourcing to places like the Philippines and India and China and stuff, but I'd never had the guts to actually do it. And then my mentor at the time suggested I go on a course, which was all about working with people in the Philippines. And so I did that and actually learned quite a lot. I learned about how you can find people in the Philippines. I learned about some great techniques, so sort of narrowing down your applicants, also about using task management software to manage a team more effectively than actually just emailing people. And those small pieces put together made actually it possible for me to make that mindset shift about, I can do this. I can actually find someone I can afford and get the work done to a sufficient standard and feel in control. So just to put this in perspective, my first ever virtual assistant from the Philippines, I paid about £3 an hour, and compared that to the £15 an hour I was paying Joanna. I mean, I could get 5 times as much work done. And that was significant for me back then. And that is the sort of reality even now. Now, if you're worried about £3 an hour not being a fair wage, or that you're sort of running some sort of mini sweatshop, and I totally get that. I was quite worried about that as well. And so I actually did some research into this. And I, first of all, looked at various hiring sites and what's a fair wage for a virtual assistant. And they all sort of said the same sort of money, somewhere between sort of £2.50, so around $3, all the way up to about sort of £6 or £7, or about $10, depending on the role, the experience, and what you sort of wanted from that person, how much you wanted them to come into a role rather than you train them up. But this was information that was really being provided by the recruitment agency. So obviously it's in their vested interest for you to then hire somebody through their site. So I wasn't 100% sure it was completely unbiased. So I actually did some research, and you can find it on my blog, about how much a fair living wage for someone living in the Philippines would be. And I worked out that about £3 an hour is actually about right. So I was confident I was paying a fair wage. I seemed to get some brilliant applicants in, and I was realizing I was paying a bit more than the average, but it was still really affordable for me, and I was happy with that. I also give some extra benefits, like I give a 13-month Christmas bonus pay, so it's like a whole month's extra pay once a year, and also some time off. So I give about 24 days, holiday every year, which they can take for sick pay, holiday pay, bank holidays or whatever. And because they're contractors, this isn't stuff that everybody's doing. So therefore, it makes my company stand out. Yeah, that costs a bit more, but I've seen you get much better staff retention if you give these sorts of benefits, because you stand out from the crowd, and therefore you're not wasting time retraining people and having to put your time and money and effort into doing that, which is a massive drain on you as a business owner. And I'll talk about that in future episodes. This is an absolute game changer for me, and it changed my idea about my role as a business person. If I could pay someone sort of £3 an hour, then even at that point when I had no income, I could afford to get help. I could afford to get other people to do the low value stuff, so I could focus on making my business a success. The problem was it still wasn't very efficient. I still didn't feel massively in control. I wasn't getting the standard of work that I really needed. It was still taking me a long time to delegate stuff, and I often felt that it took longer to get the work delegated than it would have been just to do it myself. And so I often felt frustrated. The problem was I was trying to sort of figure all this stuff out while I was trying to run my business. And the two things were colliding all the time. I was getting stressed and frustrated. I had a newborn baby to look after. I was still flying to and from the UK and spending a lot of my time traveling. And so my time to actually get this stuff sorted was pretty limited. And I decided to do something pretty drastic. So I actually cut ties with all of the deals and developments and business ventures I was doing at that moment, just to go back to basics and start from scratch. How could I work effectively with a team that lived on the other side of the world that I actually could afford, and then start the business up again and build it up from there? That meant I no longer had to travel to the UK because I wasn't actually doing any new deals or looking for any new properties. It meant that I had time just to dedicate 100% of my efforts and focus on to figuring out how to work efficiently with virtual assistants. And that is what I did. I put my heart and soul into this. I read dozens of books. I watched hundreds of YouTube videos. I went on courses all around business, systems, outsourcing. I went back to my notes in my first degree, which was in computing and in systems analysis and design, and looked through all of that stuff and brought it all together and created some incredible frameworks for not only finding and hiring the right people, but also delegating effectively, on creating systems for actually outsourcing like huge chunks of my business, on creating really decent instructions in minutes that allow me to get my work done exactly the way I want it done every single time and without my involvement. And doing all of this for around £3 an hour totally changed the way I saw the potential of my business, my role in my business, and what my business could become. I was massively excited about what I discovered and was telling basically everybody I met. I ended up setting up a Facebook group, and then after a while posting to the group saying, look, would anyone like to learn this stuff? Can I share this with you? And I had 6 brave beta testers who signed up for my first ever paid course. And the results, though, that those beta testers got transformed not only their lives, but then transformed my life as a result. I realized that what I am good at, what I created in trying to fix the problems that I had, of pulling in the years of experience of working computing and in systems analysis and design, and working in a hospital as a doctor and a leader, as in creating courses for medical students, of having 3 or 4 failed businesses before this epiphany happened. Bringing all of that knowledge together gave me something quite unique. It gave me the ability to actually create really effective systems to help other people to manage teams and to do so in a really cost-effective way. And it was that I was sharing on the beta course that I created. Frameworks for how you hire someone really efficiently, to know they can actually do the work you want them to do before they actually come and actually work for you. How you delegate using frameworks to make sure you always get your work done exactly the way you want it done every single time, and without your involvement, to make sure that when you do delegate something, they have everything they need to complete that task from start to finish without having to come back to you and asking you for anything at all. Also, frameworks about how you manage people, how you manage their workload, but also how you manage them as people, to build trust, to build rapport, to get them to become a part of a team and to believe in your cause and your vision for your company, and then stick with you and help you deliver and grow that in the future. And it's all that I want to share in the coming episodes in this podcast. Thanks so much indeed for listening. And tomorrow I want to talk about some of the big barriers that a lot of people have about working with virtual assistants. Barriers around trust, around security, around control, around language barriers, time differences, and all these things that really stop people from ever taking advantage of actually finding somebody on the other side of the world who can help them in their business at a price they can afford, to allow you to scale your business far more quickly than you could otherwise. If you've already got an established team, then imagine being able to actually reduce your staffing costs or grow your company by freeing up your existing staff to focus on really high income generating stuff and get your admin done for £3 or £4 an hour. This is the absolute mindset shift. And if I can help you to overcome any barriers you've got, then that will be a massive success. So that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Until then, thanks very much.
Thank you so much for joining me and listening to this episode. I'm well aware there are hundreds of great business podcasts out there, and you chose to listen to this one, and for that I am truly grateful. Hopefully what you heard today took you one step closer to building a successful business so you can share your passion with the world and serve an ever-growing number of people. If you got value out of today's episode, then so will someone else you know. By sharing with others what has helped you along your way, you will grow your influence and be the guy or girl that everybody wants to know. So please hit the share button right now, and also remember to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss future episodes. It's impossible for me to cover absolutely everything in these podcasts, so please do head over to systemizeyoursuccess.com right now and download the show notes, transcriptions, and some of my best frameworks and systems for free. Thanks again for tuning in and being a part of this amazing community. Until next time, this is Dr. Steve Day, and you've been listening to Systemize Your Success.